Beijing is set to host the SCO summit military parade this week. World leaders, including Russia and India, are scheduled to attend the high-stakes meet where influence and alliances will be showcased. Prime Minister of India Narendra Modi has arrived in China, where he was warmly welcomed ahead of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit in Tianjin. He will be joining President Xi Jinping, Russian President Vladimir Putin, and more than 20 world leaders. French Foreign Minister has stated that the United States should not block visas for Palestinian Authority officials to attend next month's UN General Assembly. EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas has declared that Russia will not regain access to the $245 billion in frozen assets unless it pays reparations for the war in Ukraine. The head of the International Red Cross has warned that Israel's plan for a mass evacuation of Gaza City is impossible, citing the lack of infrastructure to move people safely and in time. The statement has come on a day when Israel has moved forward with shelling of Gaza to destroy Hamas entirely. Ukrainian lawmaker and former parliamentary speaker Andriy Parubiy has been shot dead in a hail of bullets in Lviv. A killing President Volodymyr Zelensky is condemned as a horrific murder. Authorities have launched a full investigation into the attack, according to official statements. Ukraine's military has said that it struck 2 Russian oil refineries overnight, targeting facilities in Krasnodar and Syrzan, with explosions and a fire reported at the Krasnodar plant. The attack marks yet another escalation in the war. French unions have called for a nationwide strike on the 18th of September to protest Prime Minister François Bayrout's €44 billion austerity plan, with union leaders blasting the budget as a horror show. The strikes coming ahead of the 8th September confidence vote could force Bayrou to resign, add pressure on President Emmanuel Macron as well. Our top focus right now, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has confirmed the death of former parliamentary speaker Andriy Parubiy, who was murdered in the western city of Lviv. Zelensky said authorities are currently investigating the murder, with a search underway for the killer. This comes as Russia's defense ministry reported strikes on Ukrainian military facilities overnight. It said Russian forces targeted enterprises, rocket and aviation facilities, and military airfields, causing further damage to Ukraine's infrastructure. In a separate incident, Russian strikes in Ukraine's Zaporizhzhia region have killed 1 person and injured 24, including 3 children. Authorities in the region have reported severe damage to residential buildings and infrastructure. Ukrainian Air Defense Forces have stated that it has downed over 500 planes and 30 missiles in the latest offensive. Andrea Lucidi, war reporter, joins us live on the broadcast. Mr. Lucidi, I want to understand, what do you make of the latest strikes, given that there is an attempt to find a way by the United States of America to bring both Russia and Ukraine to the table, but in the background of the strikes and counterstrikes continuing, why is there a hesitation to agree to a temporary ceasefire?
Well, in fact, the war is continuing, and despite any attempt by Donald Trump to make a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine. Why? Because all the parts, Ukraine and Russia, continue to have claims about reasons, and they want even more. For example, from Ukrainian side, we see that Zelensky is not available to reach a peace treaty without what he calls security guarantees for Ukraine. And there is a big problem for this because Ukraine is not a member of NATO, and without the membership of NATO, Ukraine cannot have the security of Article 5 from the North Atlantic Treaty. And Donald Trump said many times that the membership of Ukraine in NATO is completely impossible. This is the first problem. The second problem is about the Russian claim of the territory of what in Russia it's called the new Russian territories, like Lugansk, where I'm now, or Donetsk, Zaporizhzhia, and Kherson regions. These regions are now officially part of Russian Federation, but the international community refused to recognize this de facto situation. And for Russia, it's important that the international community will recognize the Russian claims on these territories. And Zelensky himself told that he will never recognize this territory as a part of Russia, even Crimea, that is de facto Russia since more than 10 years. This is a big, Donald Trump himself said that this is the biggest difficulty for reach a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine. Both leaders have requests and some red lines that they will not make any steps back.
Mr. Lucidi, but at the same time, what will it now take to build some sort of confidence and trust between the two sides? Because while the talks can take place, there has to be some end to the strikes and counterstrikes and to the damage of infrastructure that's taking place in both Russia and Ukraine.
Well, yeah, this is a part, unfortunately, it's a part of the war. Ukraine continue to launch drone attacks against Russia, and Russia make the same with missiles and drone against the capital of Ukraine, Kiev, where the main part of the military industry are based, because now there is, since some months, these new tactics from Ukraine to base small factories for drones inside civilians building a residential building for decentralize the military production. And these tactics for the security of the military factory, it works, but it's a big risk for the civilians that are living in this neighborhood. Ukraine begin to attack some refinery and oil factories for attack the oil industry of Russia, that it's very important for the base economy of the Russian Federation, because now we know that the West is concentrated for make sanctions against the Russian oil and also for the customers of Russia, the organization and the corporation that continue to buy Russian oil. In Europe Europe and in the US was a big discussion about India, for example, that it's continuing to buy Russian oil, and Donald Trump wanted to make sanctions against India for this, but then this was not applied. And I think from my point of view is that any country that is not involved in this war, and India is not involved in the war, can make a business with whom India wants, like a sovereign state. But unfortunately, we live in a world where some states and some sovereign state organization pretend to be like a world police. As a war correspondent that is based in Lugansk, I can say that the civilians that are living here, and they know the war since more than 10 years, because the war here was exploded in 2014, not in 2022. They want peace. They want to live living normally in a peaceful world. But in my point of view, the situation is very complicated. And since till the Ukrainian side will refuse to recognize the reality of the battleground, will be very difficult to make some progress for reach the peace.
Mr. Lucidi, thank you so much for joining us on the broadcast with that perspective. We leave it there. Meanwhile, Chinese President Xi Jinping has reaffirmed his country's commitment to supporting the United Nations' central role in global affairs, emphasizing China's dedication to true multilateralism. Xi has also assured UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres that China would continue to be a reliable partner to the UN. Guterres arrived in Beijing on Saturday morning ahead of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit 2025. The SCO is emerging as a major global power center, with Asian superpowers gathering for the summit, which will take place on the 31st of August and the 1st of September in the port city of Tianjin, China. Mr. Andrew K.P. Leung with us on the broadcast. Mr. Leung, what do you make of Xi Jinping and China's promise to the UN that they will continue to be reliable partners? And this comes at a time when globally there is a lot of question that is being raised on the role of the UN in the decades to come.
The UN was established firmly following the failed example of the League of Nations right after the Second World War. And for quite some time, in the beginning, after it was established, it did have some sort of a role in maintaining global stability. When the whole world was governed in a way, or led by the American found and led liberal world order based on commonly accepted rules of engagement, respecting other countries' sovereignty, and then a more inclusive kind of mentality towards the weaker states, and also helping to grow the global economy. But now this liberal world order, rule-based order, has been cast asunder by President Trump 2.0, pivoting towards the American first, using coercive tactics and bullying, not only against China, but against Americans' long-term allies, including the transatlantic relationship with European unions and other countries around the world, in fact. And so this is a time when the global South is rallying together, not to form a bloc because no country wants to make an enemy of the United States, but to recalibrate relationships and to seek areas for coordination, to address common challenges like climate change, food security, pandemics, development opportunities, and sustainability in the global commons. Not that they do not have differences. Of course, there is a huge difference in ideology, in geopolitics between countries like India and China, and China and Japan for that matter, but also between the members of the Shanghai Cooperation Agreement, even to a certain extent between China and Russia. But in spite of the differences, I think they're rallying together to turn the global order back to a peaceful, a more cooperative environment where countries can seek the development, protect the development rights, and to grow the economy, bring benefits to peoples across the world. And particularly in an organization like the United Nations, which is supposed to stop or to find methods to diffuse regional conflicts, this role has been seen to be increasingly ineffective. Look at what's happening over Ukraine. Look at what's happening on the humanitarian crisis over Gaza, and all the wars, the Afghan war, the Iraq war. Many of these have ignored the United Nations Charter. So the United Nations is plagued by the Security Council, the 5 members of the Security Council, which was a legacy of the victors of the Second World War. But the victors of the Second World War and bear no relations to the change geopolitics at the moment. because after the Second World War, China was very, very poor, and was not even shown any kind of attention during various agreements. Immediately after the Second World War, settling territorial disputes and so on, and China was just totally ignored. But China is now the world's, of course, second largest economy, and of course it also ignores the rising powers in the global south. What about the rich and very powerful the Middle East, the countries, the Arab League, for example? What about the African Union? And what about the South American countries? What about the aspirations of a share in the decision-making powers in the Security Council of countries like India, Brazil, and so on? So I think that President Xi's remark is to highlight the a kind of revival of the role of the United Nations. But of course, the revival cannot happen without a basic reform of the power dynamics of the Security Council, the permanent membership.
Right, absolutely. Mr. Lim, thank you so much for joining us on NewsX World with that perspective. We'll leave it there. Meanwhile, Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez has condemned the U.S. decision to deny Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas a visa to attend next month's UN General Assembly, calling this unjust. This follows the U.S. State Department's move to block Abbas and others linked to the Palestinian Authority from entering the U.S. for the event, citing security and foreign policy concerns. A spokesperson for the Palestinian Authority, Nabil Abu, has called on the U.S. to reverse its decision. Let's listen in to what he had to say.
نطالب الإدارة الأمريكية بالتراجع عن هذا القرار الذي يتنافى مع القانون الدولي. هنالك اتفاقية مقر بين الأمم المتحدة وبين الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية على عدم منع أي وفد رسمي، خاصة ونحن أعضاء في الأمم المتحدة، نحن عضو مراقب منذ عام 2012، وبالتالي هذا قرار مخالف لاتفاقية المقر، كما أنه مخالف لطبيعة الأمور بشكل عام. نطالب الإدارة الأمريكية بالعودة عن هذا القرار. هذا قرار لا يساهم سوى في زيادة التوتر وتصعيد الأمور، ونحن حريصون على الاستمرار مع شركائنا العرب والأصدقاء الأجانب في التحرك تجاه.
Meanwhile, in Gaza City, Palestinians are mourning the loss of loved ones after 6 people were killed while waiting for aid near the Zikim border crossing. The tragic deaths have highlighted the ongoing humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Joining me on the broadcast is Mr. Yossi Cooper-Vasser, Israeli intelligence and security expert. Mr. Cooper-Vasser, thank you so much for joining us on NewsX World. I want to begin by understanding from you, how fair is it for the United States of America to deny visas to heads and officials of the Palestinian Authority, and how does this help in taking a conversation forward?
Well, thank you for having me. The decision is reflecting the fact that ongoing efforts by the United States to convince the Palestinians to deny help for terror and to condemn the 7th of October attacks were in vain. And the Palestinian Authority continues, in spite of all its commitment to pay salaries to terrorists that are incarcerated in Israeli jails and to the families of other terrorists, and refuses to deplore the 7th of October attacks. And that is something that the Americans cannot afford ignoring. It's something that they were working hard vis-a-vis the Palestinians in order to make them do that, and the Palestinians refused to do. And you can't allow to the United Nations stage people who support terrorism actively by paying salaries to terrorists and refuse to condemn terror attacks like the 7th of October massacres.
All right, Mr. Cooper-Vasser, thank you so much for joining us on NewsX World. With that, we move on to our other big focus. The 2025 SCO Summit is is set to take place in Tianjin, China, and will be the largest in the organization's history, with over 20 world leaders coming to discuss security, counterterrorism, trade, energy, and digital cooperation, as well as food security concerns. Additional topics will include cyber defense, artificial intelligence, and the formalization of Belarus's membership. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Azerbaijani President, and Pakistani Prime Minister have all arrived in Tianjin for the summit, scheduled for the 31st of August till the 1st of September. Chinese President Xi Jinping has already held meetings with Myanmar's Min Aung Hlaing, Nepal's KP Sharma Oli, and Kazakhstan's Kasim Jomart Tokayev in the host city, with Maldives President Mohammad Mizu also in Beijing ahead of the talks. The summit will see attendance from leaders including Chinese President Xi Jinping, India's Prime Minister, Russian President, and over 20 other world leaders, with chiefs of over 10 international organizations. The summit marks the 25th anniversary of the SCO and comes at a time of deepening global conflicts and internal struggles. Leaders will use the platform to strengthen energy cooperation, advance regional security, and enhance digital defenses, while positioning the SCO as a counterbalance to Western organizations like NATO. Joining us on the broadcast is Dr. Satoru Nagao, fellow at the Hudson Institute. Dr. Nagao, I have to begin by asking you, what are your big expectations as far as the SCO summit this particular year is concerned, because it is taking place at a time when there is the heat of the American tariffs in almost all nations worldwide?
It is expected SCO is dividing the two groups inside, I believe. One group is they want to form something like the NATO against the United States. So originally, China and Russia are planning to make the SCO to be something, the Warsaw Pact, something like that. But for most other countries do not want to make the SCO to be something like that. More talking places about the global south is the purpose. So that's why originally the SCO had something divided, but now they expand the countries who belong to the SCO, and the new powers, new countries join. This division has indeed strength. And the problem is, indeed, India and Pakistan both join. And in this case, they cannot talk about Pahalgam, and they cannot include the word in the joint statement. Just before the SCO, we can see a joint statement between India and Japan, they mentioned about Pahalgam. But in case of the SCO, very difficult, because China is moderator and arranged it, and Pakistan is a close ally of China, and they show the influence. In this case, Iran's influence is also a matter of concern, because they want to say something about Israel, and India do not want to join. So that's why all of these issues is indicated that SCO is a big group and talk about global south is possible, but at the same time, like China and Russia, this SCO should be the anti-United States, but very difficult to achieve. And there are too many opinions about terrorism is also there. And so that's why, so both India and Pakistan, so that's why the SCO indeed face something privileges inside of the group. But that is a situation, it will happen this year also.
Right, absolutely. Mr. Nagao, thank you so much for joining us on NewsX World. With that perspective, we leave it there. Meanwhile, European Union's foreign ministers have met in Copenhagen to discuss key foreign policy issues. The talks primarily focused on the Russia-Ukraine war and the situation in the Middle East. They will be discussing a proposal to suspend EU funding to Israeli startups as initial punitive action. However, there is a split between member states over sanctions on Israel. Spain and Ireland are pushing for heavy pressure on Israel, whereas Germany and Hungary are resisting strong action. While the meeting took place, Palestinian supporters demanded sanctions on Israel. Many EU governments have criticized Israel's conduct during the war, particularly over the deaths of civilians and restrictions on supplies of humanitarian aid. Danish Foreign Minister has talked about the Gaza situation. Listen in.
Regarding Gaza, we are witnessing the most catastrophic humanitarian catastrophe. We have long been arguing that Israel should change its course, and we will do our utmost to find common ground. I don't think I reveal any secret by saying that there are nuances between the 27 countries in Europe. Our position is that we now must change words into action.
And Dr. Satoru Nagao, fellow at the Hudson Institute, joins me on the broadcast. Dr. Nagao, how do you view the split within the EU as far as sanctions on Israel are concerned?
Of course, supporting Ukraine and issue related with Israel, both are the main topic of the Copenhagen Info Minister meeting, I think. And in this case, of course, just before the UN and the Palestinian issue is matter, and the European countries mainly is moving to admit Palestinian state formally, but that is, of course, not a consensus in the European countries. Some countries admit, but some countries still not admit. And the United States is indeed very influential in Europe still, so that's why this will affect the decision. But in case of the Ukraine, that is a more bigger matter for Europe, because if the Russia wins Ukraine, that affects the food of the Europe. So that's why the European must improve their defense industry. Especially the United States make pressure to Europe, raise their defense budget, but at the same time, the US asked Europe to pay the weapons to go to Ukraine from the United States. So that's why they need to prepare money. So that's why this is a big matter. And in case of the ammunition, it is true that for a long time, European countries ignore to invest for their defense industry. So that's why when they need ammunition, they cannot produce. That's why they need to buy from the United States. So how to improve their defense industry as soon as possible is a big matter for all of the European countries, and they need to talk and arrange it. That is immediately they need to do. Because defense industry improvement in demand 4 years in the process in the past, Winston Churchill, Prime Minister of the UK, Winston Churchill said, first year just investment, second year a little they produce, third year many, but fourth year fraud of the production has made from the defense industry. So that's why the 4 year is one kind of the cycle. Indeed, currently the company owners say same thing. If they make a new production line, the 3 years they need, so this means that's completely the same with Winston Churchill's point. So that's why the European must start this process as soon as possible, coordinately. But indeed, this is that is a big problem for them.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Nagao, for joining us on NewsX World. As per the reports, nearly 500,000 people have been forced to flee their homes due to flooding in eastern Pakistan after days of heavy rain caused rivers to overflow. Three transboundary rivers, flowing through Pakistan's Punjab province, bordering India, have reached exceptionally high levels, impacting over 2,300 villages. Nabil Javed, head of Punjab Province Government's Relief Services, has said that 481,000 people trapped by the floods have been rescued, along with 400,000 of livestock. Overall, more than 1.5 million people have been affected by the flooding. Let's hear what the residents had to say.
पता नहीं अचानक पानी ऐसा को नहीं पता को आके भी ऐसा घर में आसे आके अचानक पानी आंदा है भी घर छोड़ो असा कहाँ जाऊँ घर छोड़ के असा तो किराएदार आसे असा घर नहीं छोड़ा बैठे रहे तो सारे मोहल्ले वाले घर छोड़ गए सारा मोहल्ला छोड़ गए असा नहीं छोड़ा
यह था किसी दूसरी जगह शिफ्ट कर दिया था मैं अकेला इधर रहा था फिर मैंने बोला चलो ठीक है अभी इंतज़ार करता हूँ हो सकता पानी ख़त्म हो जाए ना आए जब मेरे घर के फुटपाथ मेरे घर के गराज के ऊपर आया फिर मैंने मोटरसाइकिल के किक मारी भाग गया मैंने अब जो है ना नहीं है 2 दिन हो गए इतना टाइम नहीं मिला कि कपड़े ही अपने ले लें या हेलमेट ले लें, कोई चीज़ नहीं ऐसी में।
And that's all that we have time for. We will continue to bring you more updates from around